Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Find and Follow podcast, where we are all about helping you find and follow Jesus in your everyday life. I'm Scott, your host, kind of on a special edition of the Find and Follow podcast. I think this is the first ever, so this is pretty cool. I've got two guests with me, James and Amy Haynes, and welcome to the podcast. So glad you guys are here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we kicked those other guys out, so there's more room for us to talk and
Perfect.
right? It's so good. Well, you guys are here. You're friends. You're part of Mission Church, and we're really here today because you guys wanted to come and share kind of the fuller, I don't even know how to say that right, more fuller
Not so condensed version.
of your guys'
Less
story.
compacted.
Yeah. So, James, you actually volunteered your story for Easter.
Yes. Yeah, kind of.
Not volunteered.
There was
I wasn't in a meeting. I showed up to
yes.
another meeting, and so I wasn't sure how it went down.
Yes, there was a meeting, and we were talking about what Easter should be like and how we can connect it with people. And I think it was probably Rodney, if not Kyle, was just like, "Oh, James, your story is so great. That would be good." And then we moved on to something else, and it came back one more time, and I was just like, pretty sure they really want us to do it. And I'm like, well, I'll talk with Amy and see if we can make it happen, and we'll see what happens from there. And I think I was surprised that she said yes right off the bat.
Well, I didn't want to say no if somebody had already asked. I just needed to be able to prepare.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of preparation.
But the Easter thing, obviously, that was like 5 minutes, 6 minutes. It's
Yeah.
hard to put it all in there and have it. I mean, even this will probably be still somewhat condensed, but not as condensed as 6 minutes. So
Sure.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing to do, and everybody knows that. Listening to try to tell a short version of a story that is decades, almost decades, like long, is the hardest thing. And
Yeah.
I ask people all the time, hey, could you share a really big thing that God's doing in your life in about 2.5 minutes? But in a really cinematic way
Yeah.
and appealing, relatable to everybody with enough detail, but you can't make it lengthy. Go.
with the music behind
With
it.
some music. We're going to have a little B-roll, a little fade in, fade out. It is really, really hard.
It
So
is.
you guys are like, hey, I think, Amy, you said, I'd be willing to come on the podcast. And was
I
like,
said it jokingly because
Okay.
I do listen to the podcast, but also knowing that the podcast is more than 6 minutes. So,
yeah, sometimes they're 60 minutes.
yeah, whatever.
It just depends.
Yeah.
It depends on how chatty we get,
Sure.
which shout out to my mom. I think she still holds the record for being on the podcast, the longest podcast. She's got enough words. I got enough words. And my dad has enough words for our entire podcast.
For sure.
And then the three of us, I think Kyle was on that episode. So the four of us.
I feel like I have enough words, but also I take a while to get to the point sometimes and then kind of get distracted and have to circle back. So that's why sometimes ours can be a little long.
That's all right.
You're built for the podcast.
I am.
Perfect.
Yeah, this
I
is
am built
great.
for podcasts.
Yeah.
I can step in anytime if you need. Just kidding.
Awesome. And we were just talking right before we got filming. James, your teacher, counting down the days before summer hits.
17 days.
Right? Anybody who's listening in has kids or is part of school system, they are on the countdown.
Or on the countdown
Do you,
for sure.
do you do anything official? Like a calendar with the X's or a chart or anything else?
Yeah, we do this little countdown thing when you start counting. It's when the first few days where the weather is nice is where you start oh, is it happening? This is it? And then especially right after spring break, and then you get close to Memorial Day, and you're like, oh, this is it. The
Just
time has come.
Land the plane.
Here we go.
Let's go.
All the
Let's go.
activities they have at the end of the year, it just leads right up to it. So usually it goes pretty quick once you hit
Yeah.
Memorial Day.
Yes, after Memorial Day, we'll blink and it'll be done.
Do you have anything left in the school schedule as far as events or programs or?
Yeah, we do a talent show and a field day, and there's a couple of field
There's
trips.
a fun run,
Yeah.
which we walk. We're the walking parents.
I don't run.
We're not like you guys.
I don't
Yeah.
run.
Marathon
It all
people.
counts.
Sure.
All the steps count.
Does it?
Yeah.
It absolutely.
Fun
That was-
run or borderline
Shuffle.
okay walk. Yeah.
I'm not. Listen, I applaud everybody and anybody. You're getting out moving 100% all the time.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's good.
But talent show, fun run, like field day. You just went through. You guys have a lot.
We
in
just
17.
had bingo. We had a PTO bingo night.
Last Thursday.
James has a field trip on
Yeah.
Friday.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure how I knew that, but
Probably on social media somewhere.
I think on
Shared,
the
maybe?
video clip, little James, you guys' son James was world famous because he was on the
Oh,
news.
he was on the
He
news.
was on
And
the
he
news.
was
That is
talking about his
accurate.
teacher, who's actually the one who's like got the award, but he got a bingo pretty quickly when we were at bingo night, and he was like, "Is this because I was on the news?" Like he thinks it's related, like
Yes.
he's famous or something, and so now he's got all the
They
luck.
called out your numbers because
B42.
Yeah,
like,
he was
world
so
famous.
pumped. Yeah, he was
Me.
so pumped about that.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah,
So
a
we,
lot.
yeah, he's awesome. He's a character.
he's a goober.
His bit was great on the news. Crim 2 News, Google it. It's great. So let's jump into your guys' story. Speaking of school, you guys met in school.
Yes.
A long
Yes.
time ago school, right? How long
Ninth
ago?
grade,
Ninth grade.
Evergreen Middle School.
Spanish.
Junior high at the time.
Senora Daniels
Oh,
was our Spanish class.
that was the first time.
That was the
Was
first time.
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's when we became we met and became friends. And
Yeah.
then we were in band together. Well, I was a color guard girl, and he played trumpet. Kyle was in the band with us actually.
Really?
So he could.
That's
Oh yeah,
accurate.
I've got a lot of cute
Was he
pictures of Kyle with his
Bass
little
playing
baby
then?
face.
Was he drums? He was a
He's-
bass drum at
He
that
was
point.
a drummer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
His
he
twin did
played
trumpet.
baritone one year.
Okay.
He did the trumpet with James. His twin brother did.
Bryce did,
Bryce
yeah.
did. Yeah. Yeah. We used to like hang out at the Kingsley's house all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good people.
They are great
We
people.
can very much just vouch for the stories when Kyle says them, and people are like, "You think he's making those up?" I'm like, "He's not making
No.
any of those up."
He jumped out the window when Grandma was babysitting him. We
Yep.
know. We saw that. Yeah, no, they're good people. I just golfed with Mike and Kyle and Kenny on Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We met at carpool from the Kingsley's house.
Sweet.
So still the same spot.
Yep.
Do you have any more band stuff, James? You do a lot of band stuff currently. And,
Yeah, I'm
uh,
currently with Ridgeline High School over in Liberty Lake. They just opened this past year, so we just finished the Lilac Parade and did all that. And
Now,
yeah,
do you march along with that? What was
I
your
walk
role?
along with it.
Okay.
Yes,
You don't officially march since you're not a.
I'm
participant.
I'm a part of it. So
It's
I'm
kind of
not
a big
par-
thing.
I'm not a parade person.
I was a parade person. I loved the parades.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you do the marching band?
I was a color guard girl.
Okay.
Dance team.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Out front with the flags,
Yep.
leading the way.
I didn't
Yep.
mind being in the parade. Being in the parade itself was fine. It's like being there, just
It almost it
And
like
then-
rains.
then you like pass everybody and like God bless the Meeks family and they're just there and I saw them and I'm just like I smiled and waved and they're smiling so happy and I'm like, you're at a parade, like y'all know that, right? Like
They chose to be there.
they chose.
I'm
to
sure
be there.
nobody forced them to.
Nobody did.
Did they have a kid participating? I'm trying to think.
I don't know.
Did
They
like Maya
could,
do any
maybe.
aerial stuff or something? Or
I don't know.
They
But
just loved the parade.
They just were there, living their best life, and I'm like, you guys get it. I'm almost done. So
Amy and Nathan Clark's daughter was in the parade.
She
was like a
was.
lilac princess
She
or
was.
something. So
Okay.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. See
I always
people
wanted
along
to
the
be
way.
that.
Yeah.
Wave at them. Do your
That's
thing.
also to my thing with it is walking along the parade and watching people on the sides. I'm a like people watcher a little bit, so it's very sensory overload because it's quick. You just have to I'm like scanning the crowd really quickly, and that's more of my thing than other people. So
You're like reverse parade watching. You're
Yes.
watching the people not, as you go by.
Yes.
Like, who are them? What's their story? Are they together? Why is that kid running around? What's going on here?
yes, and then all the kids trying to high five.
Or somebody's
I'm
like
like,
yelling to
yes.
get his
My hands
attention.
are my hands
Who
are
was that?
in the pockets. I'm like, I don't.
You're
That's
not
a
going.
lot-
You're not going any high fives.
It's a lot of germs.
Just get a
Little grimy
bottle of
little
hand
mitts.
sanitizer. They're everywhere.
Grimy little mitts, touching cotton candy, and who knows what else, and then want to high five you, and then go like this, and then high five. I'm like, I'll pass.
Okay.
It's all good.
Nice little wave and stuff.
Glad we figured out where you stand with the germs. That's
Yes.
important for everybody. So back to you guys in high school.
Yes.
back at you guys met. When did you guys start dating?
It was the end of our junior year.
Yeah, 2003.
Yeah. May 2003.
Yep.
So how
Is that because? So were you guys friends for?
We
couple
were.
Years?
We
Would-
were,
would you
actually.
hang out?
Yeah, because our little group, like our little band group, right? We were all friends and like went to all the dances together and all that stuff. All of our senior year, we have like all of our dance pictures, homecoming and winter formal and all of
Yeah.
that. It was so fun, and we would like go to the Kingsleys afterwards sometimes on some of those. So it was just within our group. We were all just friends. And actually, him and me, we were friends, but we bumped heads a lot. And so a lot of people would always joke, like, you guys fight like you're married. Like, you guys act like you're married. And we're like, ooh, no, ew.
So how did it happen?
And then it
Who
happened.
makes a move? Like, do you want to go out? Just the two of us, not with
I
everybody
remember
else?
we were
or-
like working on a school project or something. And
Yeah,
I was
I
like
made the
trying
fir-
to be
I made the
flirty
first move.
nonchalantly.
I made the first move for sure.
Yeah, I guess. Actually, we had our first kiss after the Lilac Parade
And
that year.
Sherry's.
Oh wow!
in the Sherry's parking lot.
And
But
you're
it was
still
after
not-
the
and
Lilac
you're still
Parade.
not a parade guy.
See, so
after
it's all
that?
tied together. I know there's all those memories that are tied to like
Yeah.
our high school and friends and all of those experiences and stuff. Anyways,
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you guys start dating, and so you've been friends, dating, and then what? What's happened
started
next?
going to church with him. That's really when I started going to church, was with his family.
Okay. Had you not have really a relationship with Jesus before? What was your upbringing like?
We were like Easter, Christmas people. My mom was raised Catholic. So when we did go to church, it was always like midnight mass kind of thing. But I always went to youth group with friends, always went to church camp with friends, like Camp Luther Haven and stuff. The Hansons,
Yeah.
Kathy Hansen was like a PTO mom at the elementary school. And I was in Alicia's grade. And so did a lot of camps and things with them. I actually got saved in their backyard way back when in like the 4th or 5th grade or something, long time ago.
Wow, I didn't know you knew the Hansons all the way
Yeah.
back then.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Alicia and I were in the same grade, and then Emily was a year or two ahead of us. So
Just a year ahead of us.
I know there's so many. Amy babysat us a couple of times, me and my siblings. Yeah, long time ago. So when
That's
we first started
fun.
coming here, and I was like, oh, it's the Hansons. Like I always loved the Hansons, and so yeah.
And James, what about you as far as growing up and finding Jesus, your family, and
We were
exposure to God?
I grew up in Southern Baptist church, and I was saved when I was 8. Baptized on Mother's Day, actually. And then, yeah, I grew up in the church the whole time. My parents served. They did everything for people. Set a really good example in that mindset. And then the church where we were going to,
and that's in Texas?
Texas, and then Oregon for 5 years in the like Portland area. It's called McMinnville.
Oh, I know about it.
Yeah,
They got a aerospace museum I just heard about last week.
they do. It's pretty legit.
Yeah. Lori
Yeah.
Meeks was like, you got to go to the museum. It's
Of course
great.
the weeks were.
And I was like,
Do
I don't
everything.
know if I'm going to just vacation in McMinnville. And she's
No.
like, well, we were at like a soccer tournament
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
did this
That
fun
makes
thing on
sense.
top of it.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's super close to like Lincoln City, Cannon Beach, and all that, so it's fine. But no, and then we were there for 5 years, and then we moved up here in 2000. And yeah, we were going to our church for a while, and then after we were married, my parents moved away, and then that's when I got more involved in the church, in the background of things, and that's when kind of I just started noticing a lot of holes in things that weren't supposed to be holy. No church pun intended. You know what I mean though? Like there were just like things that didn't add up. Lots of different things like, oh, we're saying and preaching this, but we're saying and doing something different. And it just kept going, and I was just like,
They're just very old school. I mean, it's Southern Baptists, you know.
there's
Which
nothing
we
wrong
still have a
with-
lot
and
of
there's-
great friends
yeah.
from that church
And
and
there's nothing
family,
wrong with-
obviously, but
There's nothing
it was
wrong
also
with it, but it
going from
was-
like no church experience, and then it's like we go Sunday morning, we go Sunday night, we go Wednesday night, we have Bible study, and like there was just a lot.
there was a lot.
And trying to impress his family and wanting them to like me, I very much wanted to be a part of it.
Sure.
But then I did actually I was curious and started learning things. So it was a good thing. But that's really where my learning of it and all of that came about.
So you guys you're dating, you're going to church a little bit more, trying to get to know the family. And then you get engaged, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At a church Valentine's dinner thing,
Yeah,
actually.
That was pretty legit, actually.
Was it?
Yeah,
Well, they were doing like a church Valentine's, like, or like
Like
the
a couples banquet.
yeah, where like the youth would serve.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so
He got to be the MC.
I
and
was
it-
the MC, and they did like we videoed other people's like proposal stories, and then I was like, well,
And then
I don't.
you were the
I'm
surprise
about to
one
make
at the
one
end.
of my
I
own,
have
like
my own
something cheesy.
My own proposal story I'd like to do right now, and that was it.
And it was like Western themed, so we were wearing like cowboy hats and stuff. It was
Yeah,
it was ridiculous.
super weird.
But
Gotcha.
But it
Yeah.
worked.
It worked.
Yeah.
It definitely worked.
it was fine.
So, listen, sometimes us guys, we just got to go with what we got.
I
And
know.
If that's all we have,
Yes.
that's
No,
all
it
we
was
have.
good. It was
When Amy and I, my wife Amy, when we didn't know each other, and I cold called her basically, and I said, "You're from Spokane. We're in Seattle area. You're from Spokane, and I'm from Spokane, so we should get coffee." Like, because that's all I had. Like, that was my only connection. That was it. So
well, it worked.
I worked. She still gives me a hard time. I'm like, what else am I supposed to say? Like, that's all I had. I'm going with it.
There you go.
So,
That's still good though.
Yeah,
Right?
it was good. So that was like 2005,
Yeah.
Valentine's Day, 2005 ish. Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
yep.
Yeah. So you guys get engaged, get married. Tell me about getting married in that first year of marriage. And what was that like for you guys?
Well, it was good. We were young. We were only 20 when we got married. So, you know, we were just babies, really. I mean, when you think about it, that's not very old.
No, now that I have kids, I'm like, oh, you should start dating about 24 or
Right,
25.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
and we were engaged before then. So we were engaged at like 19. So,
Yeah.
But I remember back then being in such a rush too. Like, oh, I can't wait till we get married. Obvious reasons. But also like, you want to fast forward to all of that. And then now it's just like, oh my gosh, that was so young.
Yeah. I can't imagine James getting married that young.
No.
Yeah.
Because
That's
that's
crazy.
9 years from now.
Yeah, say like 9-10 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
No.
nuts. Let's
Nope.
No.
let's skip over that. I'm not ready for that.
But it was okay for all of us, right? But
Yeah.
so you-
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it was. And I think, I mean, in hindsight, potentially waiting a little bit longer would have been something that would have been beneficial just because we could have explored more of our, as our personalities develop and we, things like that. We get out of the high school mode because, 19, we were still in high school mode. Like our relationship hadn't like transformed and moved to the next level to anything more foundational, more deeper. It was still there. We had a lot of stuff in common, but I think potentially waiting longer would have helped. But you can't really just live in that. You can't really live in the woulda, shoulda, coulda. So you just, yeah. So
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. I thought the first 3 months of college was summer camp, just really, really long. And
Yes.
then,
And
and then
I
it took me a while, like, oh, no, this is different. I got to switch gears. Like, I think that's normal for everybody to mature and hit these different stages where
yeah,
life kind of hits you like, oh, this is different. I got to mature. I got to be, act different, think different.
Yeah.
yeah.
So you guys get married young,
Mm-hmm.
and tell me about that first year. You gave me some notes. I'm kind of going off of here as
Sure.
well, but talk to us about what that was like.
The first year was, I thought, went really, really well as far as just we were figuring out life, figuring out how to live together, figuring out how to navigate all those things. And, our biggest spoiler alert for anybody who doesn't know, our biggest thing is intimacy. And that was a lot caused by me having like porn addiction in my life. And that was actually what was the catalyst for us pushing our wedding forward, was trying to alleviate whatever was causing that at the time. And neither one of us really knew the depth of it at the time. And so,
Well, I didn't.
well, I didn't either.
Well, okay, that's true.
To be honest, I had no idea what the depth of it was as far as what the causes of it and the roots of it and all those things and what was
Sure. Okay.
what was it?
I understand that.
Yeah.
But it had been going on for before me.
Way before you.
But yeah, I understand what you're saying. Not
Yes.
understanding the causes. That comes later. You have to
Yes.
dig into everything to try to fix it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you're young and stuff and it's just like, oh, well, that's not a big deal. All the guys do that. when we're married and can do it whenever we want to, that won't be a problem. That's really was my mentality, which is naive. Once again, we were young and nobody really talked to us about that stuff. We went to a Southern Baptist church, so it's not like we had marriage counseling where they talked about those types of things. So it was just like, that's why we pushed up our date, because it was like, well, yeah, once we're married, this will resolve itself, because obviously he won't need that anymore.
And I appreciate you guys' willingness to share your story. And part of the motivation is to maybe help someone else listening in, as you guys have had other people share their story. And so as people listening in, it's whether it's their story or someone they know, to bring stuff to the light and talk about it. And that's when the good stuff happens, as Jesus said, live in the light and bring stuff out, and to help maybe create some space for some of these harder conversations to happen in homes and households between couples, and let God do some healing.
Even like parents with
work.
their kids talking about sex and about like porn. Yeah. Like we knowing how things started so early for him, and we have a son. It's just like, I don't want those things to repeat itself.
Yeah.
But it is hard. It's hard to bring them up. It's hard to bring up those, because if they're not thinking about it, then you don't want to put it in their mind yet, But definitely learning on how we want to try to do things differently. But it was always just kind of a hush-hush thing. It was just not, it wasn't talked about.
I remember one of the things in our church, and not to blast anybody because people make mistakes and things, but they literally did like a marriage thing and skipped a section of like the marriage, like come to this thing and we're going to talk like marriage and love and da-da-da-da. I don't even remember what it was called. Do you remember that? And then they like skipped a whole section.
Was it love and respect?
I think so.
Or
maybe.
for women only, like the for women only,
but
and the for men only. They skipped a whole
section that was like specifically talking about like sex in marriage, and they said it was that they thought it was too inappropriate, so they skipped it. And I'm just like, oh.
Also, we were like one of the youngest couples in our church. So.
Right. So they probably felt like, we're talking to our kids here, and we didn't talk to our real kids about sex, so why would we talk to our fake kids about sex?
Right.
And it is one of those things, and as a church community, we try to highlight it appropriately in age-appropriate different contexts to go, this is God's plan and design, and there's a big, beautiful world that he created, and that's part of it, and he says yes to intimacy, and it's far greater than a physical act. It's an emotional, spiritual, uniting thing that happens, and he's all for it. He just put safeguards around it so that it's good for us. It's healthy for us. It's helpful. It's just the same as when we do for our kids when there's a hot stove and they don't know yet, not touch. The stove is made for cooking and providing food and for our health and our benefit, but used inappropriately by touching it, it's going to burn them.
Right.
So we're like, don't touch.
It's going to leave a scar.
Yeah, don't do that. And they're like, why? Because I've touched it before. It's hot. It's burning. And so to have that conversation, start with it's good and it's beautiful and it's God thing. I think it's a helpful, maybe for somebody listening in, that's a helpful starting point. Sometimes I think too often we start with like, well, here's the brokenness. Here's the bad side. Here's how it's been inappropriate in my life.
Sure.
Like, let's start with God's design and plan. And there's need for repair and restoration because of the brokenness, but yeah.
And, I mean, some people, I guess, can like watch it and just like be done with it and not think about it anymore. But for some people, it really triggers something in their brain and it can cause like a legit addiction, just like drugs and stuff. And so to like really push the point home to people that, if something like this can start as young as 12 and then it caused issues. I mean, would you have expected that when you were like 12 or 13?
Nope.
Doing your boy thing, and then you think, oh, this is going to affect my marriage one day.
No.
Like you don't think about those
thing
things.
Too is like I've talked with a couple of people, and they're like somebody just went and had surgery, and they're talking about like, oh, I'm gonna have my wife like take my pain meds, and they're like recovering, like they go through recovery, and like they've been through that, and like I'm gonna have so that I'm accountable for pain meds, and I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like that's never occurred to me to like take extra pain meds, and then I'm like, oh, I just didn't put on that shoe.
It's just a different addiction.
I have a different shoe,
Yeah.
and so that's fine. So yeah.
And so you guys get married in kind of the normal first year, figuring life out like everybody else. How we live together and life unified and.
Well, he lived at home until we got married. I
Okay.
lived on my own for like 6 months or something.
So much experience.
I know, so much. But at least I had like my own apartment for a little bit and paid my own bills for a little bit before he moved in. But I mean, he was at home
I
up
paid my
until
own bills.
we got married.
My BMG Music Club. Yes.
No way. I didn't know you'd be old enough to
Yes, BMG Music Club.
in like Columbia Records.
Oh, yeah.
Like
I was like, I think it
mail
was
it in, get-
actually like, I think it was
like 10 CDs for a penny or
Yes,
something.
Yeah.
You gotta
yes,
pay
we
shipping.
all-
But here's
I got
the
myself
and
shit.
you got to
into
cancel it
shipping.
quick,
Yeah.
and then like 6 months later, eligible to get it again.
Didn't
Yep,
cancel it.
Didn't cancel.
Me
you got
neither. I got
stuck.
in a lot of trouble with my mom.
Then you're buying $24.99 CDs that you don't want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you don't want.
That's-
Anyways, yeah.
kids have no idea. Had no
No.
idea. People listening, they're like, "What?" Yes.
Yeah.
Um.
I was in a DVD club too. It was
Oh,
pretty
man.
sweet.
Before Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember when Netflix was DVDs? And
Only.
you had to have
Yep.
them mailed to you?
Mail it.
3 at a
And
So
time.
good.
And you hoped you didn't get a mailed one that was scratched and it didn't play.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Get scared, and you're like, "What do we do now?
Oh no.
We have no idea."
First world problem.
They're like, we'll send you a 4th disc for free that month. And you're like, okay, sounds good.
Talk me
That
into
was
it.
worth it.
Oh man, that's so good.
So yeah, in 2007, I don't know if this was our first like traumatic event, but we had pretty much gotten into a very like great routine with our life that first year, just with what we were doing. We had our work times during the week. We did tons of, I feel like we did tons of stuff with friends on weekends and things like that. Sundays, we did our church thing. We went and hung out with my parents at their house, hung out with my little brothers and family, and it was great. And then in 2007, my parents moved to North Carolina. So I would say a huge foundational part of our life
Yeah, I would agree.
went away. And I think that was really hard. It was super hard for me, but it was very hard for Amy as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's when I started, that was the beginning of like, oh, how do I deal with trauma in a different way? I need to do things like, oh, I'll just stay busy. Like that's how I managed grief, was staying busy, and it continued through like the next traumatic thing that happened, and then the next thing. It was just like, ooh, let me stay busier. I'll have a good cry every now and then, but I'm just gonna stay busy and I'll be fine. And that's where it was.
Yeah, and that's normal for a lot of us to
Mm-hmm.
kind of cope with it that way. And then you guys had a lot of trauma with
We did.
in that short period of time. Your folks leaving, obviously, but the loss of just seeing each other regularly. Then
Yeah.
Absolutely.
your dad passed away, Amy, very suddenly.
Yeah. So his sister actually passed away in November of 2009.
Yeah.
And then
Was that traumatic or abrupt?
So she had cystic fibrosis.
Okay.
And I talk about it now like this, and people are like, okay. And
it's a coping mechanism, so he
not
doesn't cry.
It's not a coping mechanism. It's not. It is just like it's just real. Like she was not given a life expectancy past 12. So like people would be like, oh, like 25, and I'm just like, well, it's like an extra 13 years than we thought we'd have. And I know that's people are like, oh, cool, people live longer than that. And it's like, I know, I'm aware of that, but like the silver lining piece behind it is we got a lot longer than we thought we would have.
But it was sudden in the fact that like she was doing okay, and she like went in for a checkup, and then when she left the hospital, she ended up getting sick and had to go right back in and never
Yeah.
came out, basically.
Yeah, she was in the ICU for 2 weeks, and then, yeah, it was not great.
Yeah.
It wasn't super fun.
Yeah.
So
And then the pastor of our old church got shot and was killed. That's not funny. I'm not laughing at that. See, sorry, coping mechanism. And that was in August of 2010
on our
anniversary.
wedding anniversary.
Yeah, it
On
was
the
on our
day.
wedding. Yeah,
On the
August
day.
26th. And then September 14th is when my dad died. But he went into the hospital on September 2nd, just having like shortness of breath, couldn't breathe. They diagnosed him with pulmonary fibrosis, which is different, but obviously still affects the lungs. Originally, they said, okay, yeah, he'll still have 5 to 10 years, but he'll have to be on oxygen, like, he was going to leave. But he never did, and he died. He was in the hospital for 12 days, and he died. We literally, like, were there with him when he died.
Yeah.
So there was that. And we both grieve very differently. So he's talking about how he's just like, okay, you know, funeral's done, family's out of town, it's back to work. It's back to all this busy, busy, busy. And I just am like a depressive slug. I just want to like sit around and do nothing. I took as much time from work as I could. When I did have to go back to work, I came home, I laid on the couch till I had to go to bed. He cooked, he cleaned, he did everything. Like we just were so different and how we grieved. And obviously like when you're grieving, who's feeling in the mood? So that was just like another thing that just, then that added more time. And I mean, we would go months without anything. But we got used to that. That was our normal.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a lot. And you guys were still very young.
Yeah.
Very young.
Yeah.
And
it's not how Cosmo said it would be, man. There's another flashback for you.
She's joking, but
I am joking, but
she's not joking.
I mean, that's not what they
That's
tell
not
you.
what Nicholas Sparks said would happen in the
Right.
Notebook.
yeah.
We're supposed to die together, holding hands, and we can't even like have sex on a regular basis. This is not what I signed up for.
Right.
Sorry. But I mean, really, that's
No, it is
kinda
like
how
to
it
our
was.
expectation of what's life like gonna be like, and
For
especially
sure.
get married,
Mm-hmm.
and we all have ideals and pictures, and then you're like, yeah, sometimes the real life thing is
Mm-hmm.
way different. And so, what do we do then? How do we handle it? You know?
Yeah, there's no quiz in a magazine that's gonna help you out of that one.
Nope.
Nope.
Yeah. And so, you guys dealing through this grief, and it's just kind of, is it something you really dealt with at the time, or just kind of moved along and just kind of, hey, we had our own little ways to handle it, and we kind of just moved past and.
I was medicated for a while because I was having terrible time sleeping. And then, I don't know, so he passed away in September. My birthday's in January, and I remember this because I remember weird things, but it was around my birthday, and he had planned like a surprise party for me, but like kind of gave me a heads up because he knew I was not very social at that time. But he wanted to do something for me. And I remember around that time, like I started to kind of, I mean, you're
Yeah.
never over it, but I started to at least not be so depressed all the time.
And what about your guys' faith in all of this? And how was that part of the picture as far as just turning to God and finding peace and comfort in Him? Or was it a time where you're just like, God, why is there all this loss? And
It was a
where
little
are
bit
you?
of both for me because I'm still not as strong in faith as like he is. I don't know. I feel like sometimes I haven't quite let myself get all the way there, you know, if that makes sense. You know, in Old Baptist Church, we were singing hymns and stuff. I mean, it wasn't songs from the radio. And I just remember It Is Well With My Soul is like the song that always would make us cry because it was at Heather's funeral. We sang it at my dad's funeral. But I remember that would just make me feel, I'm like, this is not well with my soul, actually. So I feel like a hypocrite singing this. It would make me very, very sad. And I went back and forth. I was never really like angry with God. Like I knew everything happens for a reason, but I was still very, very sad. So, I mean, yeah, it helped us through. And we had close friends, you know, that prayed for us and his family for sure. I mean, not that my family didn't, but my family weren't church people at the time. So, if that makes sense. So they kind of helped us through it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it just came down to foundational stuff. I maneuvered through it differently. I had my vices, as obviously, going on throughout the whole time, but I also was able to hold on to things I had learned, and then like all of the stuff that you had learned in church and all the stuff, you finally like, okay, cool, time to put all that into practice, and here's some real life situations to do it in. And so it was, to me, it was more of a sink or swim situation. Do I allow this to take me down, or do I figure out how to move past it? And I tried to set a good example, but I also felt like it was unfair of me to expect her to react the same way. Looking back on that, that's how I feel now. Probably in the moment, I was like, why don't you, like, you got it. Like,
Well, he didn't want to push me. I don't think.
No, I didn't. But I was also like, okay, when do you, like, when are you going to help yourself? Like, when are we going to do this? Like, when are we going to move on? When are we going to start living life again? Because nobody would want us just to stick around being sad for them not being here all the time. And I was very, and I've said this multiple times, but I was very angry through. I was a very anger problems is not necessarily it, but like I would go 0 to 60. People started calling it 0 to James with anger, and I just would lose. I would just be, and I would get really mean and things like that. Not necessarily. It would just depend on the moment. But that's something I also had to work through too, is like my anger stuff in regards to dealing with life events and not being able to process something, take what the next step would be, and also show Jesus through the whole thing. For me was a huge journey spot. And then on the whole front of it, hiding a porn addiction behind closed doors just makes you feel like a hypocrite and you're shameful all the time. So that was fun.
Yeah. But I know I'm fast forwarding a bit here, but you began to find some help with that. And is that part of what the like turning point was in a bad way, I guess, turning point, but like the leading towards you guys getting a divorce was just the porn addiction and not dealing with it, or what led you guys to?
Once I knew that it was still a thing, because I thought that was done. I mean, I guess I assumed he's a guy, maybe once in a while, whatever. I have a headache, the typical thing. I don't know. It didn't bother me as much. But then once I found out like how bad it actually was and that he'd been doing it the entire time we were together, it makes you feel like garbage. And it was hard to come back from that, So, yeah, I don't know. It was just when I had found out about it again, that was really when he like confessed it. Like, this is what in full on open.
Still didn't know that it was as rooted as it was. Like, still wasn't aware.
It was after we had been coming here, and so we started going to like marriage counseling with like a Christian marriage counselor, and then he started doing recovery.
It was before we came here. We were still at that other church till 2013.
Oh, I guess that's
like
true.
August of 2013.
Well, shoot, I messed up my timeline then.
I know. It's okay.
Dang it.
There's a lot
I
of
tried so
points.
hard.
It's all right.
I know.
So, James was born in February of 12. We moved in with her mom, and it was pretty much right after we moved in with her mom to try to save money for a house that everything kind of blew up with me. Confession, begging, please don't leave me. I'll understand if you do.
I'll do anything. I'll do counseling. I'll do this. And
I'll do all those things.
So it was after that, though, because you are who called. You're like, I will even look for the person. Like, I will look for a counselor. I will set it all up. And he did.
Yep.
He found someone under our insurance and all of that. So then at some other point after that, I guess, is when we started coming here.
Yeah.
And he had started
2013.
Yeah. He had started doing recovery.
Yeah.
But whatever
and then it was like whatever January, the Freedom Ministry, when they start back up.
Yeah.
And then that was the first year they started the Conquer series.
The Conquer
so
series.
Needless to say, it wasn't. Not saying that the whole world revolves around us, but and Mission Church's whole plan was to be like
to help the Hayneses.
We're here for the Hayneses,
right.
But it was very like
timing.
Hey, we're starting this brand new thing that might help some people. Anybody know of anybody?
Timing was
timing.
And I remember her like saying like you should look into that, and that's all she said. It was like on a Sunday. It was when we still did the paper bulletins, and she like circled it and handed it to me, and she goes, "You should look into this." And I remember feeling a little offended at the time too.
Well, for the record, I also did recovery, just like the regular 12 steps.
Yeah.
I'm not saying nothing's wrong with me, but I just
No.
thought, hey, this looks really specific to you, and the timing is right. Like you should.
And we
look
did it
into
at the
this.
same time.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
And there's nothing wrong with the circling and passing the paper over.
No.
I think just as a whole, I'm just gonna take your story and leverage it for everybody else. I think we all need to be doing a little bit more of that with each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like we need motivated by love, but to help each other.
Yeah.
There's a little too much stigma out there. Like, well, it's your business, it's your life, and I can't get involved. Like, we need a little more.
So we need to go back to paper bulletins.
I'm not sure about that.
No,
but
not necessarily. You just text
again,
a friend.
Heart of loving
you
one
can come
another.
sit with me, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't Kyle saying that? Come sit with me on Sunday.
Right.
Then
Be with each other.
Then
be
you
like,
can see it on the screen instead of being passed a paper bulletin. Oh, hey.
yeah, or just
check that out.
let me speak into your life a little bit. So, so you guys are counseling, freedom. Like, are things
And
trending
he was
better?
trying so hard, and I felt badly because at that point I really just kind of felt like the damage was done. I felt like in the beginning, like after that first year when I noticed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, But I thought that, like, okay, this isn't right. We are only married a year. We should definitely be having sex more often than we are, and would try to like initiate things or be romantic and like whatever. And he was just like not receptive at all. And you can only take so much of that before you start to internalize it. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, okay, whatever. He'll come when he wants it, I guess. Like, come and let me know when you're ready or when you're not busy. And I just I got mad about it then. So I feel like I really tried hard in the beginning. And then at that point, he was the one that was like really trying hard. I don't feel like we ever were really trying hard at the same time. And I think I think if we both were trying hard at the same time, that maybe the divorce wouldn't have even happened. But by the time it did, I was still just so far checked out. Because even with the recovery of that stuff, like, it's hard. It's like you learn as the spouse of someone with an addiction that it's a brain thing. And it's like they tell you, like, it has nothing to do with you. Like, I am attracted to you. I do love you. I do want to be with you. But then your actions show something different. And that's very hard to reconcile in your brain. And,
and in your heart and your
yeah,
emotions.
Sure. I mean, and as many women, I think you internalize that. You're like, I'm just like a normal person. I, was heavier then than I am now. And so you think, well, sure, I get it. Why? I don't blame you. And then you get in this cycle about yourself, and then that doesn't help.
Yeah.
We just got ourselves into just bad cycles and bad patterns. Like, we would try, but then it would be like, nah. And it just wouldn't go anywhere. So.
Yeah, I think.
Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Oh, this is just a great conversation we're having here.
Like the question from the beginning? Yes, we just finally got to it.
No, but I think
I told you.
I mean, I think that's one of those highlights, and I hope people really understand that when God says to be renewed by our minds, that it drives a lot of our lives. That is totally true. And I always chuckle when science, quote unquote, science discovers like a God truth. They're like, hey, when you begin to do a certain action or have a certain thought pattern, it literally is rewiring your brain to that way as normal. And God would be like, yep, that's what I'm saying. Be renewed by your thinking. And
it's so hard.
God's like, do you remember when I
said that?
Do you remember when I said
long time
I wrote
ago?
it down. I even had somebody.
It's like a guy in a meeting who's like, I got a great idea. And they say the same thing someone just said 30 seconds ago as like they were originating it.
Yeah.
But it's very true.
It's hard to come out of that when
it's
you're
very
so
hard.
deep in it for so long. It's just hard.
And I think what you said too, and James, you agreed, was, and so for people listening in might be helpful, is, hey, I was fighting at this stage, and then you were fighting for the marriage at this stage, and just kind of felt like you weren't really both fighting for the marriage at the same time.
Yeah.
And for someone listening to really recognize, like, and it takes just
Get on
a thought
that
process.
same page.
Yeah, and just go, okay, am I really fighting for it, or am I trying to find a way out? Am I trying to find into it's a spiritual battle and it's a mental battle, but to go, okay, I need to fight for it, and I need to be responsive, even if you see someone else fighting for a marriage, and it just seems like a little thing. But man, lean into that and be encouraged.
Well, and even
if
like,
there's a little progress.
it's not like we were miserable that whole time. Like, I know that sounds like it was just the sex stuff. Like, we're still best friends. We still parented really well. We, like to watch our shows together. Like, we still enjoyed each other's company. It's not like we didn't still love each other, but it had very much shifted into just a like, hey, we're friends and roommates.
Right.
That's really what it was.
Kind of co-managing.
And for a long time, I was okay with that. Because I was like, he doesn't beat me. He doesn't gamble. He's hardworking. He loves me. He's a good dad. Like, I'll deal with this. This is fine. But it got to a point then where that kind of shifted. And
And so, again, trying to make this the more condensed version as we can.
I know.
And we are kind of hitting a lot of the negative highlights, if you will, which I love that you make sure you brought out.
Yeah.
Like, your friends, and there's lots of good stuff. And you guys are hanging out with friends on weekend and doing great things. And so this is not the totality of your guys' story at all, but just some of the stuff that maybe isn't talked about as much or seen as much in order to help others.
Sure.
And so, but you guys you're trying this stuff and fighting in different ways, counseling and freedom ministries, and but you do eventually get divorced, right?
Yes.
So how did that happen? And
I felt like the divorce part was potentially for me the worst part because it started in like October of 2016 and went all the way till December of 17, as far as like just
because we went back to counseling.
We went back to counseling.
It got put on the table, and then you guys are trying to figure out if it's
and
really
he
happening.
didn't want it. My
It
family.
was a lot of ebb and flow and a lot of uncertainty, and I don't deal well with uncertainty. I like control. I mean,
Rip the Band-Aid right off, guy.
let's
And I
go
was just-
black
Yep.
or white.
Let's just
Yes or no.
be done.
And
Yep.
and then when she said at the time, like, yes, I'll try, I don't know that we had an honest conversation enough to know where our hearts were at either way, to know how deep I was still in or how much she had still been. She was still hurt. She was still so far back. So I don't know where we were at. I don't think that's. So I took it at face value of like, oh, you're in, then that means that equals yes. 1 + 1 = 2. That equals yes. Then we're good. So then to be, in my mind, blindsided again when it was an official, like, we're separating. This is what we're doing. I was like, oh, I thought we were. No, we're not. Okay, we weren't good. So then it was to me, it was like a re-trauma thing over and over again, and it wasn't. There was never a time where I thought like, oh, she's doing this on purpose. This is intentional. It was never that. It was just like it hurt. It hurt every single time. But then I go back to like, how many times did I hurt her? And then it goes to like a tit for tat situation. And I know that that's not a place to live at either, but it was there for sure. Of like, oh, I deserve this for sure. Whatever I get, I definitely deserve, because it was a lot on me for all those things. So never that it was never a time, even if I may have vocalized it, to be fair, though, like a frustration where I was like, oh, she's doing this on purpose. She's a malicious person. I probably said that, but in reality, it wasn't. I knew that she wasn't being that way.
I felt at that point like I feel like we're beating a dead horse. Like, we're not happy, So.
And you guys tried, and
We did. We went back to counseling, and I feel at that point counseling was kind of like, check it off the list. Like, okay, we went back one more time and it still didn't work. So yes, like, let's move forward with this. And obviously, if I ever thought there was a chance of reconciliation, like, why would we have gone through a full on like legal divorce, selling our house, apartments, like, every other week? Like, why would we have done that? Why I wouldn't have done that if I thought that there was hope for us at that point. I really thought we were done in that way.
Yeah, and I touched on it a little bit in our story too for Easter, just of the back and forth that and the process that I went through of being like, done, this is my boundary, moving on, and then getting around to the point finally of whatever God wants is what is fine, is what I should be like fine with, and that took a while. I don't even know if you remember. I don't know if I've ever told you this story. Do you remember we were going through the separation, and do you remember do you know what I'm about to say?
I think so. I'm
About
gonna let you go so I don't look embarrassed.
When we were in church.
Awkward.
When we were in church and we were singing, I remember it like it's clear as day. We were singing "One Thing Remains," and I don't know who was up there talking, but they were just like, hey, if you're going through something like that, and I remember like you came up behind me and you just put your hand on my shoulder, and it was just immediate, like the worst ugly cry probably of ever, and you just told me like things can still be hoped for, like Jesus is in control, God has you, like, and you just words of affirmation and all the things I wanted to hear. I wasn't in a place to believe what you were saying. Mm-hmm. But I was totally in a place to appreciate those things, and that I don't think I'll ever forget that moment.
Yeah, me neither. No, I remember. No, I didn't remember the song title, but that's because I don't really remember the song titles from last Sunday.
That's fair. That's fair.
I can sing along, but I do absolutely remember that moment, and it was not a Scott ordained moment. Sure. It was a God ordained moment, and it was God just said, pray for James, go up there, lay your hand on him, and just be community, be believing together, right? That's why we need to carry each other's burdens. For me, that's what that means, is like,
yeah,
you desire reconciliation and restoration, but sometimes it's harder in the everyday. You're like, I'm growing weary in believing. Like, I need someone to come alongside, and I really do feel like that was a Holy Spirit moment where it was, I believe, for you guys,
Yeah.
for healing, and there's hope with God.
So
Like, all things are
I
possible.
don't even know at that point that we had. I mean, I don't know if it was just public knowledge. I don't even know that. I mean,
I don't remember exactly. I mean, I was aware you guys were separated, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know what I knew at that
point, it was
moment. I
probably
just
like
knew.
water cooler gossip. I don't know if that's a thing, but
Well, we do have a water cooler in the back,
Yeah,
but I don't think I heard it there.
I don't think there's any.
Yeah, I just knew that my friend was feeling
Yeah.
hopeless a little bit, but had hope. You know,
Yeah.
it's that confliction of like, God, I believe, help me in my unbelief moment.
Yeah.
And absolutely.
Well,
just
even the
encouraging.
reconciling, like we didn't both want that at the same time initially either. So,
So-
I think he was holding out for me for a while
Were-
after the fact,
Let's-
kind of.
Let me ask
She
you
likes
this
to
question.
believe
Oh,
that.
stop.
Let me. That's great. Let me ask you this guy's question. You know, just so you guys separated, but then like God was in that space. God was working in both of your hearts, kind of, right? You're working on growing yourself and being okay with just being me. Or talk to me about that time where, because I've heard that from many different people, right? Where you create a little bit of space, and then God has maybe more of our attention or more some room in our lives or something, where He helps us to work on growing as a person. And
Do you mean like before we decided to
no, when you're
reconcile?
separated.
Oh.
Yeah. So
So it
from
leads into a reconciliation moment. God's doing some work there to get back to the point of like,
yeah.
I
again,
just always
spoiler
really
alert.
struggled with like, is this God talking to me or is this me? I've always had a hard time with that. It's like, how do you know when God's nudging you? Is this something, this new job's coming up and it's like, I really want it. So it's like, yeah, God wants me to have it, but it's like, does he? That was an inner thing for me. Just like, is this me or is this God? Is this me or is this God? I was just like a hot mess. That was hard. That's hard for me to decipher. So anyways, I digress. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, you're fine.
What was God doing in you personally as you're growing?
For me, though, it was like I dived into community here at church. For a while, it was like, yeah, I'll serve every Sunday. That's fine. I need this. I think I was in a position definitely in my mind saying, I need this more than y'all need me right now. And I know that's not the way to go about it, but it was definitely like, I need to be here. I need this in my life. I need to be serving. I need to be doing this. I need to fill up space.
Stay busy.
I need to stay busy
Routine.
because we're in trauma mode, which is fine for a season, I think. At least that's what I tell myself, is that it's fine for a season. But no, I started to find different passions and different joy in being okay with being happy in myself without accolades, without people congratulating or thinking that it's a good idea or thinking that it's like, oh, I think that's great. Oh, you're doing so awesome and things like that. And I had never been a person to really like when someone tells you thank you, like, oh, you did a great job singing. I'm just like, don't compliment me. Thanks. Bye. Like, oh, you should just don't just clap. Just like send me a note or something I can read privately. I've never been that person to like, I'm bad about birthdays and Christmases and stuff. Like I love to give presents. I like to get presents, but the ideal Christmas thing would be like collect all your gifts and then take them home and open them privately would be my ideal way to open presents, which also is
Which ruins it for everybody.
100%. I'm aware.
You get that.
So
yeah.
I work at that, but like I don't like. So that was something I was working towards this too with myself. Is just like what's making me happy. I got to like dive into more of activities with my friends. I got to do a couple of like traveling events. I got to go to New York with the band at the time and do fun stuff like that. And I realized like, oh my gosh, there's other things that I like that I never realized. And it wasn't because we were together or she was saying no or anything like that. It was because that's what like we never maybe had the opportunity because we were doing these other things and there was other things in the way. And now we know that I think we always knew we always wanted to do stuff, but we're being more intentional about like, we're going to go take this trip or we're going to go do this or we're going to be really intentional about these next things. Like we're going to try to do a cruise in December and like we put the stuff rolling to make all these things happen because that's something that we want to do and it's important. It's not spending extra money on doing something that's just staying home and watching another movie. It's like doing something that making a memory. And so for me it was like, how do I hold on to those things, but how do I also balance that whenever we get back together was a huge thing for me. Is like I didn't want to give those things up, but also like this is going to add to my happiness if we do that. So how do I need to balance those things? And I felt like I've been better at that with just like, and I think what the biggest thing was I never communicated. Like, oh, I have these things going on during the week. And I would just be like, I'd get home at certain times. She goes, where have you been? I'd be like, oh, I had the thing. And she goes, okay. I'm like, next time you could tell me that you have a thing.
We have a color-coded calendar now. So
yeah.
things
home
like
base.
that don't happen. Yeah, we have a...
Yeah.
That's one of those things.
There's a sign above
learning
it that
going
says,
forward, how we want to do things
There's
differently.
a sign above it that says live by faith. And that's the faith that you've put when and where you're supposed to be on the calendar.
Yeah,
and that you follow it. And then just add stuff randomly.
Yeah.
So anyway, my happiness was finding that I could be happy in like that in my passions and things that I enjoy doing and be fulfilled in that and add somebody else to that happiness versus like rely on them solely for how I felt, which we shouldn't do anyways.
Right.
Newsflash.
Newsflash. It's a lot to put on someone
don't
else.
Do that.
Well, but when you're
you
together
happy.
so young, like that kind of just happens sometimes.
And that's why I like touch base with that at the very beginning, like that foundation. Waiting a little bit longer and realizing some of your passions maybe earlier would have helped with like, oh, my happiness is not all wrapped up in you, and vice versa, or even our kid. Like that's great, but where's our joy coming from? Where's our passion, sweet spots, all that stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was God doing in your heart through this time?
Like I said, I was kind of a mess. My stuff kind of came later because after we had split, I was in another relationship like right away, all the way up until
what?
like March of 2020.
Wouldn't that have been like a podcast bombshell?
No, I can't handle that.
I'm totally
Never.
kidding.
This is not like a Jerry Springer podcast here.
Anyways, but so it's like, he had the time to sit and focus on himself. I didn't do that. And that wasn't intentional. And obviously we know like it's probably not the smartest thing to do. You're supposed to heal first and all this stuff, but I didn't do that. So when when I had finally realized like that this was not done, and after Christina and Jan's testimony, I want to say that was like the very beginning of 2020.
Right. Yeah, it was January.
That was really like the last thing. I was like, okay, this is not just me now. Like, is it me or is it God? Like, okay, this has to be God. It has to be. And so...
And I'll link that, but in case people haven't heard it, they shared their story of very similar. He had a porn addiction. They got married. It was crazy. They got divorced, separated. God did works in their heart. Mm-hmm. They reconciled, started dating, and got married again, and now have a little baby.
Have a baby.
Yeah.
So that was like I said, beginning of 2020. Him and I had parted ways like March of 2020, like literally right when COVID happened. Actually, it was a wonderful time, and so really that year, which was a kind of a terrible time, I feel like, to try to like find who you are, because then it's like COVID, and you know, what hobbies can I do while I'm stuck at home in my apartment? But so that whole year, I tried. I've got a lot of self-help books. If anybody knows me, I have a lot of books. I haven't actually read a lot of them. Like, I'm one of those people that buys them, and then they just kind of sit there.
I like the idea of books.
I do. And I've been better. But so I've been trying to like plug in, and I got back into counseling on my own, and had just tried to really take care of my own mental health and, address my depression and all of that stuff. And just, I was back in church more regularly at that point. Just trying to be intentional about when I could be with friends. Like I said, COVID kind of put a little kink in it. So, but that was the first time I haven't been alone. I've been with him since I was 17. And then I was with this other person right off the bat. And now here I am finally like alone. And it's like, I need to work some of my crap out before, even though if I think that we're supposed to reconcile, like this is what I'm hearing in my head and in my heart, I have a lot of work to do on myself first. And so I'm still a work in progress. I call myself Hot Mess Express. Like, that's me. I'm always trying to fix stuff. but I'm aware of it at least. So I like to at least, I'm not in denial or anything. I know I've got issues and I'm working through, but
allowing God to work him out.
trying.
Yeah.
Trying.
And like you said before, like getting married doesn't resolve that. It doesn't fix that. Like that's one of the things, and I know we all know that, but then sometimes we try to talk ourselves into it, or even within a relationship, we go, oh, okay, if this circumstance changes, they'll change character. Like, hey, if they change jobs, because that job is the issue. If they change the job, because the schedule of the job's crazy. So if they change jobs, then their character issue is going to change because their schedule changed. No, that's not how life works. Allowing God to change us changes us. There are some things that make, practical things like, you work a swing shift. You're tired all the time. You don't see your family. That doesn't help at all.
No, it doesn't. And he was someone who had like several jobs all the time, whether it was like he had like 2 regular jobs and then he'd have all the extra band stuff, extracurricular stuff. So he was never home. And then I was working nights at one point and our schedules were just completely off. And so, but even when that wasn't the case, we still had issues. We weren't communicating and obviously we weren't being intimate. And I just like the longer you go without that, the bigger of a hole it leaves for other stuff to sink in, I guess.
And James, for you, the root cause of the pornography stuff, like I think we kind of hit on it, but as far as just talking about, like what have you discovered is like the cause of that?
So my mom left when I was 3. My brother was 1 and my sister was 5. And so immediately there's like an abandonment issue there. When I was 12, there was a conversation she had with us, and I didn't know this at the time, but she had it with like each one of us where like at 12 years old, you can decide what parent you want to live with. And she thought that the person who left me whenever I was 3 was the best person to have that conversation with me. Like I would then like, I'll come live with you.
I'll choose you.
Yeah, that makes the best sense in the world. It was almost legitimately soon after that where like there was, I don't know if it was in my head, there was a re-traumatization or what was going on, but it was pretty much directly correlating with that moment. And when that awareness came in, and my mom and I, we have a good relationship as far as I'm aware of what she wants in a relationship, and she's, I'm not sure she's aware in what I want in a relationship, because I think it would be different if she was aware, but I'm aware of what her expectations are, and so my boundaries are very clear in regards to how I interact with her in that manner. So we have a steady relationship, I guess is the best way to put it. I don't know. You'd probably put it differently, but
it stemmed from that trauma.
I don't have an opinion on that.
Okay, perfect. She does too. But yes, it stemmed.
She doesn't have a public podcast opinion about it, and that's okay.
It's fine.
There's a lot of opinions I have as well that they don't make the podcast.
That's fair. Yeah,
but he forgave her. Like went through all of that, and they're okay now. But
it stemmed from that, and it stemmed from that trauma. And I don't know how that connection works itself out in the brain, but forgiving her, saying those words, you didn't know how long I was mad at her for a long time, and it was pretty much then until I don't know when she lived here, 2000, I don't know, before James was born. So it was there for I don't know,
several years.
10 years?
10 years at least, a decade of just, but it was like, it wasn't that I knew that I was mad yet. Mm-hmm. It was just things started to get colder and more distant. And then it was like a realization one night. I think I was at a youth lock-in at our old church, like helping out with the kids. And I remember it was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so mad. I'm so mad at her. And she lived here at the time, and I called her. I literally called her that night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of...
That's quick. Take action on that. That's quick. Again, pull the Band-Aid right off, guys.
Pull the Band-Aid. But I don't know what I can't remember what even spawned it, but I remember being like, I am so mad at her. And I'm like, this is the time. And I knew I needed to do it. Oh, it was because it was a New Year's Eve lock-in. And I knew that I was like mad, but I didn't want to start you know what? I didn't. It's very
Let's start
cliche.
fresh.
I didn't want to start
New
the
year.
new year being mad, so I called her that night, and there was also a lot of drama with her and her husband at the time. It's for another podcast.
We'll invite them on if that happens. So
Yes.
we'll keep moving your guys' story.
Yeah.
So you call her, but I think that's so important for us to all of us to have these experiences in the past, and we don't understand sometimes how they're still affecting us and these traumatic things. And nobody wants to say, like, I'm super angry or mad at my mom or hate my mom.
Well,
when you're
and
13, 15, 17 years old, you don't want to do that.
Like, when I first heard that, like, when he was going through recovery also, and, like, he kind of talked about that, I'm like, not that I didn't believe him, but initially I kind of was like, that seems like a cop-out. Like, I don't see how the two are related. Obviously, we talked it out. I'm like, okay, I can see that. That's something that triggered something then. So, yeah, that was weird for me to kind of, I had to have a very open mind about that. But once we kind of talked about it and he explained, I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's with any trauma or addiction, regardless of what it manifests itself in, and that's something that I try to explain to people going through, not your popular addictions, I guess, or your one that people would rather talk to you about cocaine or meth than they would talk to you about porn. 100%. Like, you say porn addiction, people take a step back because it's just so.
There's a lot of shame.
A lot of shame, a lot of taboo with it, and that's fine.
It goes back to the garden, and
Yeah.
Adam and Eve had a rebellion against God, and the first result was they were aware of their nakedness and they felt shame.
Yeah.
Well, and, like, especially if you're a Christian with a porn problem, I feel like that makes it worse than just like a non-Christian with a porn problem. I don't know. More shameful, I guess. Like, if you were to say, or then, my family didn't know what was going on with us for until I wanted to get a divorce. They had no idea we were having issues because I didn't want to tell them that. Like, he's our, a worship leader at church, and we're church. We go to church. We're church people, but he's having this addiction like that. It didn't. I had a hard time reconciling that too in my head.
So my thing would be to, like, if people are listening and take away from anything is be really be understanding about people who have those things, because you don't know what it stems from. You don't know how long it's been. You don't know if, you don't know. And that goes, take away the addiction side of things. You don't know somebody else's story. You don't know enough to pass a judgment or anything like that, because that's not what we're not called to just sit around judging on people. We're supposed to be loving on people. And so I guess that would be my biggest thing, is going through it. Not that I felt judgment and shame from anything like that. It's more of my own personal stuff. But that would be a biggest thing I would encourage people to do, is, like, love on somebody, because maybe the root of what their thing is a lack of love in their life, and that love can be something that helps pull them out of it. You just don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Preach.
And you guys, so kind of get us up to speed here. And you guys have done phenomenal with the timeline, by the way. So if anybody's charting it at home, keeping track. But this last year, you guys started to connect more on a romantic level. You guys, again, always friends. And
it's so weird too. Can I just say,
together?
like, how weird that was? Well, no, we were. Even
you can say whatever you want. This is your story.
We were when we were separated. Even, maybe not so much in the beginning, because there was still a lot of, like, tender and, like, things were still like but we still did we, like, went on the spring break trip together. We did holidays together. We do birthdays, like, school things. Like, we still very much, like, my family, I think, liked him better than me, probably still does, for a long time. He lived with my mom temporarily, even after we separated. You know what I mean? So, like, we've always still been a part of each other's lives.
We were very much a model co-parenting, like, the one you see the super
I'd like to
trendy
think
like millennials doing.
No,
like, we were
I wouldn't say
definitely
we're
then.
at
We
that
were, like,
level.
Yeah,
No, we
co-parents.
You're trying to
But we
write
were
a movie
good.
script right
No,
now. Yeah.
no.
Which we don't.
But we
don't
did
want.
okay. We did good. I thought that we came together for him really well, and all
Yeah.
of that. But like to then start dating, it's like it's weird because it's like you were as part of my past, and then it was like there weren't those feelings for the longest time, and then it's like, oh well, now there is again, and then it's like, what do I call you? I mean, now we're actually engaged, so I can say fiance, but still sometimes I'm like, how do I refer to you? Like, are you my boyfriend? Are you like my baby daddy? Like,
Yeah.
what do I call you? This is James. He's my. And then I feel like I have to go into this whole story. So it's kind of weird. It's not traditional, obviously, but we're plugging along.
Yep.
But we started just small stuff like watching like Netflix, watch a comedy special on Netflix and like have popcorn, like just like a little date night. And then we started to like, let's go out somewhere.
The
We were
kids
kind
call
Like
it
a
Netflix
good
and
Sebastian
chill.
Netflix and chill.
Maniscalco on
Yeah, I mean, but then
Netflix.
it was like, well, we'll actually go out to dinner at a restaurant and like leaving
like an
little
official
James with a
date.
babysitter or something. It wasn't
Yeah.
just family stuff. Like we tried to be intentional with
And
that
I felt like
in
a
the
lot of
beginning.
those things started off the right way with lots of they were starting off with lots of conversation about what we're doing, expectations being clear, and we still have times where we like that we're just like, are we even on the same page? And then we need to have, that means like we got to have a conversation.
Absolutely, but I also think, and I don't want this to sound like negative, but I think we will still have the same issues. We do still have the same issues that we had before, but now we're trying to figure out different ways to approach them and not just like completely shut down. So we're still a work in
Yeah.
progress. Like, but I mean, that stuff, like that's something I would tell people is like, don't even test out your like, if you're a person who can watch porn and, not think about it anymore. Like it's just like a recreational thing. Like why risk it? Because if you are one of those people that gets addicted to it, it's going to screw up so much in your future.
Yeah.
And in your life. And it will be that way. It's still, I mean, not as much as it was in the beginning, but I know that I still have issues that I have to work through with myself that still stem back to that. It's constant work in progress, and it's toxic, and it's like sinking sand, and it's like you got to keep yourself out of it and keep yourself above it and stay connected and put the things in place to not start sinking, because once you're down there, I'm an analogy person. Like once you're down there, it's harder to get up.
For all the listeners, a lot of hand motions right now, up and down.
If you're on
kind of
YouTube though,
like
it's
an
like that
elevator.
horse in that movie where it's in the sand that it sinks. It's
The
like
never-ending story.
yeah, it's like that's what it's like. It's like
Yep.
that's your marriage. That's what porn will do to your marriage. You are in sinking sand, and it will
You're the
pull you
horse.
completely under if you don't
Yeah.
get
Yep.
it together.
Yeah. Get
So,
some help.
absolutely.
And nobody's perfect. No. Amy and I, my wife, we have the same hey, we on the same page conversation a lot, and hey, we've had the same conversation about expressing our feelings to one another and how that works best,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And we've been together almost 20 years, and so it's constant. Like, well, we're in it for life, and so we're gonna keep working at it. And it's not just you fix it, resolve it, and we're done. We never have to have that conversation
yeah,
again.
absolutely. And
I
it's
think
not
everybody knows who's been married more than 12 minutes.
well, and everybody's like,
that's
"Oh,
how it
you're getting
works.
back together." Like, "Oh, and you're getting married again." Like, that's so great. Like, congratulations. It's like, well, that is, but it's like it's not done. It's not like we were apart, we're back together, like and then it's like we're all fine and happy
Yeah.
again. It's not like that.
So-
Like it will constantly be.
I'm in the same
will
boat with
constantly be a
that
thing
as
to work
far
on.
as like just being a lot more real about people, and like absolutely love her, but she's also absolutely a person, just as I'm absolutely a person, and we are flawed 100%. So when people are like, "Oh, are you excited?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Oh, are you like you think it'll like everything will be good?" And I'm like, "It could."
Or do you think
Like
it'll
it's
stick
50-50.
this time?
It's 50-50. Like
Come on now, God's doing a great work in you guys. This is I think this is it for the long time.
He is, and I do believe that too. But like, there's a realistic like point of there where I'm just like I am excited. Please don't get me wrong, but like I'm also like
It's still a lot of
like,
heavy crap.
there's a
to
lot
work
there's a lot
through.
still, and as long as we're trying at the same time, and like that we're keeping God at the center of like why are we doing what we're doing. That's going to be the huge
The
thing.
triangle thing from the video, man.
Triangle.
That's so classic.
Shout out Craig.
Shout out Craig.
Hashtag Craigling hands.
I've seen
Hashtag triangle.
I've seen the triangle. It's great. When you were doing that and you did the hand motions, I like see the piece of paper he drew it on back. You know what I mean? Like for me personally, I'm like, yep, that's good. That's true.
That's it right
If
there.
Craig was here on the podcast, he'd be like, yeah, so you
I know he's missing out.
I know, so great.
I feel like there's a lot more realistic. Like
It just sounds like you guys are mature.
We're in a little bit more of a realistic place where it's not like it's not a rom-com. We have moments of rom-comness where there's like, oh, this was a great day, or this was a great date, or this was a great
But
this
then it's
and
also
that.
a dramedy or something some days.
And then there's more times where it's just like it's real life, where you're dealing with all of the stuff. We're dealing with sickness in families. We're dealing with families still being far away. We're dealing with
Depression,
all of those things.
stress, anxiety, parenting, a preteen.
Yep.
It's a lot.
And it's Monday, and we got work, and we got
Yeah.
all this stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's what I appreciate you guys just sharing real
Yeah.
transparently, and not this. We're not in a movie. It's not this 90 minutes of perfect.
It's
happy
not a
ending,
Nicholas Sparks book.
right?
It's not.
I mean, we're close.
If I could go back and tell little 19-year-old Amy, your marriage is not going to be like that. It is not going to be like a Nicholas Sparks book.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful thing that God is redeeming in you guys and restoring.
For sure.
And you guys we're not perfect people. You're not perfect people, and you're in the thick of it. And in the middle of it, as far as the restoration piece and getting married again in September.
Yep.
Yes.
Right?
September 24th.
All right.
That's the day.
Round 2 and 22. It's a hashtag.
There you go.
It'll be
Making
fun.
it a
It's our
thing.
third
Yeah, it's
hashtag
gonna
of the
be.
podcast.
It's gonna be fun. It'll be. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. It'll be good. I'm very pleased with how things have turned out, obviously. But that's all I would tell people is like it is a work in progress, and you have to put in the work. And when you catch yourself not trying at the same time, that's a red flag. I'll point that out. Watch for your red flags. Stay away from porn because it will ruin everything. And just stay committed. Do the triangle and keep your communication open. And if you're a family member or a friend of somebody who's going through something like a divorce, I don't know. I feel like it's given me. I don't feel like I've always been a judgy person in the past. I'm sure I've had my moments, but you don't know what people are like. What he said, you don't know what people are going through. There's two sides to every story. There's a lot behind the scenes that you probably have no clue about. Just show some empathy, show some grace, love on people, pray for people. I mean, we had a lot of people that just prayed for us for a really long time, even if they weren't telling us. I know that there were people out there that were doing that for us. So it's like, you don't have to be all up in someone's business to still pray for them and love them. So
Yep. And the spiritual battle of life, and pray for people, and help stand, be on guard for people on the spiritual realm, and come along and support. We all grow weary of fighting for and being on the same page. And so, encourage people to be encouraged by your guys' story, and that with God, all things are possible. And I really do appreciate you guys coming on and sharing your story.
Absolutely.
thanks for having us.
We got to land this plane because I think we are
I know.
approaching the record time, and this might
Did I beat Cindy?
That might be the length of a rom-com here by the time we're done. So, but I'm sure people are listening in still, and just encouraged by it. And so hopefully as you're following Jesus this week, whether it's your story or someone you can help them with their marriage, their relationship, and what they're going through. And maybe there's some young people listening in, or people who are single still, and like, hey.
We're an open book. If somebody wants to reach out and talk to us, go for it.
Yeah, let's go.
It'll help them get more prepared, a little more eyes open, and approaching marriage. So thanks, guys, for being on the podcast,
Thank you.
sharing
Absolutely.
your story.
Thanks
It's
for
been a
having us.
pleasure. Thanks for everybody tuning in. Hope you have a great week following Jesus. We'll catch you next time.